What's going on, YouTube? My name is Batman, and I've really gone back and forth on Destiny. You know, almost a year ago I released a 17-minute video talking about why I thought this game would kill Call of Duty. I was one of the original hype train conductors, and I remained hyped for this game up until I saw gameplay of it on YouTube. I was thoroughly unimpressed with the showing this game made with its alpha and closed beta gameplay on YouTube. I thought the PvE looked like an unfunny Borderlands, and the PvP looked like watered down Halo. Not that it looked bad, I just didn't think it looked like the next big thing, and certainly not a billion-dollar franchise. However, YouTube videos don't do this game justice, and I've tried to remedy that problem with the gameplay I show you now. But a big part of this game's appeal definitely lies in being in the world. I thoroughly enjoyed the beta for this game, both multiplayer and PvE, and I basically want to go over why you should or should not buy this game, because this game is not for everyone. We'll start with the multiplayer. That's usually what people are most curious about. I consider Destiny multiplayer a sequel to Halo, and that's not a bad thing. If you're someone who enjoyed Halo multiplayer, you know, especially before Halo 4, you should, in theory, like Destiny multiplayer. It's very, very similar. You know, I was doing very well from the very first match I played, and I realized that's because I was naturally reusing all of my old Halo techniques. It was like muscle memory, you know, like riding a bike, and they were working very well. I was doing this thing where I spend most of the time staring at the little radar and using it to basically lock onto an enemy, and then I wouldn't actually look at the screen until I knew there was going to be someone directly in front of me. And then I would briefly look at the screen to eliminate them and then go back to staring at the radar. And I actually stare at the radar too much, just like I stared at it too much in Halo. But it's the exact same technique, and it was successful in Halo. It was successful here. I also found myself using the old shotgun melee combo, where, you know, you shotgun someone and then immediately melee for the kill, and it worked just like it did in Halo very effectively. The movement and physics felt very similar to Halo. The map size felt just like Halo. The vehicles were basically using Halo physics as far as momentum goes. They handled a bit differently from old Halo vehicles, but the Interceptor is basically the Revenant from Halo Reach, and the speed bike thingamajigger, I can't remember its name right now, it's basically a more agile Ghost. And if you played a lot of Halo, the multiplayer will feel familiar from the get-go, and any skills you developed on Halo will generally be applicable here. The biggest difference between Destiny multiplayer and Halo, I think, is the time to kill. But it generally seems a little longer than the time to kill in, say, Battlefield. It's somewhere in between Halo and Battlefield, I would say. So another big difference is the skill gap, which is going to be a lot wider in this game, and that comes down to headshots. Typical gunfights in this game, gun on gun without the intervention of special abilities of any kind, will always come down to who gets more headshots. This is different from COD, where the headshot is basically useless because health is already so low that you are at most turning a 3-bullet kill into a 2-bullet kill, which won't be as consequential as, say, who saw who first. And it's different from Halo, where only one headshot mattered only after the shields were down. Gunfights in this game provide ample opportunity for up to 5 or 6 headshots, and that's a big deal, because that means somebody with better aim who can more consistently shoot you in your fucking face is going to have an extreme skill-based advantage in every fight, because even if the enemy shoots you first, if you can drop more headshots, you will come out on top. If you are severely injured and approached by a bad guy at full health, headshots can still win you that gunfight, and there's a decent amount of recoil in this game to boot, and that makes it more difficult to get those headshots, makes the skill gap that much wider. It's probably the widest skill gap in any recent multiplayer shooter that I can think of. In COD, the gunfights really come down to who saw who first. Recoil management and aim actually matter very little. Health doesn't matter much either, because health is already so low that even if you're seriously injured, the gunfight will still depend almost entirely, again, on who saw who first, and that's a big part of how COD keeps its skill gap so compressed. And the radar. Your ability to interpret data from that radar and make decisions off of said data is going to make or break you in this game. And the simple truth is, skilled players look at their radar more often and can more effectively predict enemy movements based on the red indicators than weak players. Basically, you can see anyone within your proximity at any time. This disproportionately benefits strong players who can use that information more effectively and make decisions much more quickly. The reason Ghosts removed the UAV, for all intents and purposes, from Call of Duty multiplayer was because because too many strong players were taking advantage of it to get the drop on motherfuckers every time, whereas the weak players hardly check the minimap at all. And I think that'll play out similarly with Destiny. It means there will be very few free kills, because any bad guy you might potentially encounter will be notified of your presence in advance via the radar. No free kills is a detriment to weaker players disproportionately who don't get as many purely skill-based kills. This is different from Call of Duty or even Battlefield, where there are always some free kills to be had in the sense that, oh, I happened to see this guy and he didn't see me. And I would argue COD even sets up their maps and spawns to provide these free kills to players to a certain extent. But in Destiny, that guy will know you're there almost every time, because chances are he sees you on radar. And even if you do get the jump on him, if he happens to turn on you and land more headshots than you, he can still beat you and you will rage. Destiny multiplayer has a fat skill gap, and what this means is that it isn't going to appeal to the typical Call of Duty player. Cold hard truth is, you might be that typical Call of Duty player, and you'll be a part of the big chunk of the FPS demographic that will reject this game. And it's not going to be a COD killer because it's not designed to be a COD killer. Activision is publishing both of these titles and releasing them within 2 months of one another. They aren't meant to compete because they would be competing with themselves. They are each meant to take a huge bite out of two different pies. And of course there will be plenty of people who buy both, myself included, but this game is meant to coexist with Call of Duty. It's important you understand that. Most of Call of Duty's enormous success comes from the very casual gaming crowd. These are the kids who typically only play Call of Duty or, FIFA and or Madden, and they one up on these games every year. They are basically gaming to quench their competitive urge. And there are a lot of players that are like that, and that's why multiplayer is so popular. You know, people have a natural urge to compete. That's why we like, sports. And I think a huge section, the shooter demographic, is, kids looking to compete for the same reason those kids want to play football or what have you. A huge part of Destiny's appeal is going to be based on the PvE, raids and boss fights and storylines and such, and this is going to fall flat with the majority of casual COD players who we know for a fact don't touch the campaign period. Back when Titanfall wasn't planning on releasing a shitty half-ass campaign, they argued their reasoning for skipping the campaign is that based on their consumer research, over 60% of players didn't touch the campaign. That's coming from the guys who originally worked on MW2. They probably know what they're talking about. These kids that don't touch the campaign are going to be harder to draw into Destiny because Destiny is going to have a heavy PvE emphasis. Not exclusively PvE, but I think the fact that you have to complete the first 4 missions of the game before being allowed to touch multiplayer says a lot about their priorities and appeal. The PvE is a central component to their game's appeal. I think it's their main selling point, and it's a selling point and a central component that the typical COD player won't care for. And like I said, the multiplayer has a fat skill gap, probably the fattest skill gap I've seen in a shooter since like Gears of War Judgment. And this also isn't going to threaten Call of Duty's success because COD's success is also largely based on its super compressed skill gap and general simplicity. So, if you are someone who never touches the campaign because fighting AI isn't very fun for you, and there are plenty of people like that, and even me at sometimes, that means you are gaming with the intent to quench your competitive urge. You want to kill someone in the virtual world and know that there's a real person behind it. You know what I mean? You might want to think twice about Destiny. This isn't designed to steal away players from COD. Destiny is designed to bring in a coalition of various other types of gamers, because there are huge swaths of the gaming community who don't care for Call of Duty at all. Your typical Minecraft player doesn't give a shit about COD. Your Dark Souls players, your Slenderman players, Skyrim players, and Sims players. If you look at the games that are huge on YouTube, that aren't COD, games you see from Vanoss or PewDiePie or CNanners, the sheer volume of people who play those games actually outnumbers COD players. The COD community is actually in a minority. It's just that COD is the biggest individual game. And Activision released figures during the build-up to Ghost that showed that over half of COD players only play COD and play it every night. That's where their seemingly impregnable sales strength has come from. And Activision fucking loves that, so obviously they aren't going to spend huge swaths of money trying to compete for an audience that they already own. Now, of course, there are crossover players, myself included, who play a lot of COD multiplayer but also spend time on other games like Skyrim or what have you. And we're not rare, but we constitute a minority of the COD community. We're maybe 30 to 40 something percent. I just know that before Ghost released, back when Ruben had the courage to talk up his game, he was pretty adamant that over half of the fan base remains exclusive to COD, and they have to release figures to their investors and third parties that are used as a catalyst for new investors. Somebody could have called him out on it if it was bullshit. Nobody did, so we can assume he wasn't full of shit. When Ruben lies, it's usually very ambiguous and confusing so as not to be directly called out on it, but there wasn't much ambiguity on this particular issue. If you're someone who really appreciates zombies or extinction, then you're probably going to really like Destiny. What I've always loved about the third co-op game mode, usually included in shooters these days, what I loved about Borderlands and what I loved about Army of Two back in the day, is that they are just fun games to relax on, smoke a joint and play with your friends. You know what I mean? The thing about multiplayer is that it's rarely a relaxing experience. It's usually about the competition, and the enjoyment is derived from accomplishment, not the experience itself. And that accomplishment is derived from skill, and skill requires heightened awareness and focus and complex thought processes, and then when you don't meet that accomplishment, you have frustration. But I'm not always in the mood to get all worked up and get my heart rate up on multiplayer. When you have a long day at school or work, or like I remember back in high school, when I would get home from a football game in another city late at night, I didn't want to do anything on multiplayer. My favorite thing was to get stoned and play Black Ops 1 Zombies with some close friends, and then you can fucking swap stories of the day and shit and actually have a legitimate conversation and laugh and all that good stuff. It's a nice, refreshing social experience that you can get on multiplayer, because fucking if I'm trying to plant the A-bomb and shit, I won't have the mental capacity to simultaneously listen to your story if your story lasts longer than 15 seconds. And that's how it is for most people, even if they don't realize it. Multiplayer shits on the quality of your conversations. It's not a social experience. Destiny is kind of a social experience. Destiny is meant to be played with your friends. It's a genuinely fun world to be in. During the beta, I was excited to start the fucking game. I wanted to be in the world. COD and BF are for competition. I play them for the same reasons I played football and ran track. Destiny is about the experience, an escape. I play it for the same reasons I watch good movies or go mountain biking. However, all that being said, I am still skeptical that this game will be as successful as it's been propped up to be. I'm sure sales will be great on release, but that's because of the huge amount of advertising and hype that has gone into this game. Star Wars The Old Republic had a $500 million price tag as well, and it turned a profit, but not a huge one, and was considered a super flop because within a year they had to adopt the free-to-play model. Now, Activision has said that this is their next billion-dollar profit franchise. They are propping this game up to be as huge and successful as Call of Duty. But my skepticism basically lies in a point I've already made in this commentary. What makes COD's success so hard to recreate for other games is that such a huge part of Call of Duty's fanbase is hooked exclusively on the Call of Duty formula. No other game of any kind has been able to consistently break 20 million customers on an annual basis, or break 20 million sales at all for that matter. And Activision is saying they can do this without the COD formula, and that's where my skepticism sets in. Because I don't think the PvE in Destiny is revolutionary at this point. I think it is an expertly crafted PvE experience. It was a lot of fun to play through. But at the end of the day, it's still a very traditional formula. It's pretty linear. You move from point A to point B, killing various types of enemies in between. And upon arriving at point B, you engage in a boss fight of some sort or another. And it's a lot of fun, just like it was fun on Borderlands. Now, Destiny PvE is superior to Borderlands PvE in my humble opinion. But aside from perhaps offering the most enjoyable version of that PvE style we have seen, what is Destiny bringing to the table in terms of actual gameplay experience that is going to bring in the extra 10 to 15 million customers that generate $1 billion worth of sales that other PvE games, Borderlands specifically, haven't been able to do in the past? Because Borderlands PvE, which I consider very similar to Destiny, was the most successful PvE game pre-Destiny, but it still fell well short of $1 billion franchise, and I'm not sure what trick Destiny has up their sleeve outside of hype to appeal to that huge extra block of players that Borderlands was unable to attract. And PvE will be the primary selling point of this game. The multiplayer is great, but like I was talking about before, I don't think it's going to hook huge amounts of players, mainly due to the fact that it has a huge skill gap. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a bad game. I really enjoyed this game. I'm looking forward to playing it, and I want to see it succeed. I'm just, from an objective standpoint, however, I can't help but ask, will it? You know what I mean? Because I've gotten my hopes up so many times at this point. Maybe it's not even about Destiny. Maybe this is just like, I don't want to fucking get my hopes up anymore. You know what I mean? Because like Star Wars The Old Republic, Elder Scrolls Online, Titanfall. I mean, there have been so many games in the last 2 or 3 years. Fucking Call of Duty Ghosts. You know, so many games in the last 2 to 3 years that I got hyped up for, that had a bunch of, hype sort of put into them, that had huge price tags, that had huge development periods. You know, I was following Star Wars: The Old Republic for like 2 or 3 years, and in the end, they were lackluster. You know what I mean? Not necessarily bad games, but didn't live up to the hype. And it's really stuck with me a little bit. I've seen so many huge games fail in the end, or not fail, but come up short in the end. You know what I mean? So we'll see. Only time will tell. But to summarize, if all you play is multiplayer on Call of Duty, and you don't really branch out onto various other games. And I'm not saying this makes you less of a gamer or a worse person or whatever. There are different types of gamers, different types of people. I've been the person that only plays Call of Duty multiplayer. I've been that guy. But if you are that guy, you should play Destiny at a friend's house, rent it or something before you buy it. Or I guess you could always take it back. If you are an exclusive COD multiplayer player, I'm not sure this game is going to have a huge appeal to you because it revolves around fighting AI. That's one of the central components. I think that's the main selling point, is fighting AI. If you're not big on fighting AI, might not be for you. If you're someone who loves Skyrim, this game's for you. This game is about immersion. This game is about being excited to get into the world. You know what I mean? It's like the feeling I used to get for Knights of the Old Republic. I fucking loved Knights of the Old Republic. And that's why I was so sad when Star Wars: The Old Republic was kind of lackluster and not exciting. But anyways, these are my thoughts on Destiny. Please remember to rate. This is Batman, signing out.